They told you maturity is strength. But what if growing up too fast was a psychological death in slow motion? What if the child who makes it is actually a ghost, living, breathing, but never fully alive? Most people see resilience as a badge of honor. They applaud the child who never cried, never complained, who became the adult before their time. But resilience forged under pressure is not strength. It's unfinished soul work. It's a self-constructed prison built from responsibility, vigilance, and the silence of unmet needs. This script dives deeper, not just into psychology, but into the philosophical and existential cost of growing up too fast. We won't just explain how it happens, we will confront why it leaves behind shadows where human beings were meant to grow. A child is not meant to understand survival. They are meant to understand wonder, curiosity, and safety. But for some, childhood is not a space of becoming, it is a space of enduring. Growing up too fast begins the moment a child realizes that no one is coming to save them. It doesn't always arrive as a dramatic event. Sometimes it comes quietly, through emotional neglect, unstable caregivers, constant conflict, or the unspoken rule that your needs are inconvenient. The child learns early that chaos is normal and peace is temporary, and so they adapt. Psychology calls this parentification, when a child takes on adult emotional or practical roles, but this term doesn't capture the internal cost. The deeper truth is this: the child sacrifices innocence to create stability. They learn to read moods before learning to read books. They monitor tone, silence, and tension like a radar system. Their nervous system becomes hyper-alert, scanning for danger, because danger once lived in their home. This child does not grow, they compress. Their emotional world shrinks around responsibility. Play feels unsafe. Rest feels undeserved. Joy feels suspicious. They become mature for their age, a phrase society praises without understanding the grief behind it, because what looks like maturity is often fear in disguise. Philosophically, this is where identity fractures. Childhood is supposed to be the foundation of selfhood, the period where one learns who they are without performance. But when survival replaces safety, identity is built around usefulness. The child begins to believe, I am valuable only when I am needed. This belief becomes the blueprint for adulthood. The most tragic part is not that they grow up early, it's that no one notices the cost. Adults applaud their strength. Teachers praise their discipline. Family members rely on their competence. And so the child receives confirmation that self-abandonment is virtuous. Internally, a silent contract is formed. I will not ask, I will not break, I will not need. This is not resilience. It is adaptation under pressure, and pressure reshapes the psyche. The child's emotional development freezes at the moment survival becomes priority. They learn how to function, but not how to feel safe. Years later, this early compression manifests as an adult who appears capable but feels hollow. Someone who can manage chaos but struggles with peace. Someone who was trained to survive but never taught how to live. Growing up too fast is not a badge of honor. It is the quiet theft of childhood and the beginning of a lifelong negotiation between strength and loss. Hyper-independence does not come from confidence. It comes from disappointment. For the child who grew up too fast, reliance was not rewarded, it was punished, ignored, or used against them. Asking for help either led to rejection or increased burden. So the psyche adapted. Dependence became danger. Independence became safety. As adults, these individuals often appear remarkably capable. They handle pressure without complaint. They solve problems quickly. They rarely ask for help. Society praises this as strength, but psychologically, hyper-independence is not empowerment. It is a defense mechanism built on mistrust. The nervous system of a hyper-independent person is constantly on guard. It assumes that support will fail, intimacy will cost something, and vulnerability will lead to exposure. So they choose self-reliance, not because they want to, but because it feels safer than hoping. Philosophically, this creates a distorted relationship with freedom. They believe freedom means not needing anyone, but true freedom is the ability to choose connection without fear. Hyper-independence is not choice, it is compulsion. This is why these individuals struggle deeply in relationships. They crave closeness but resist dependency. They want love but fear entanglement. Their internal logic whispers, "If I rely on you, I lose control. If I lose control, I am not safe." So they carry everything alone: emotional pain, decisions, responsibility. Even joy feels lonely because it cannot be shared without vulnerability. Over time, strength becomes a prison. They don't know how to rest without guilt. They don't know how to receive without feeling indebted. They don't know how to be held without scanning for collapse. Their self-worth becomes fused with endurance. If they are not carrying something, they feel empty. This creates a dangerous paradox. The more competent they become, the less human they feel. Because humanity requires interdependence. It requires softness, trust, and shared fragility. All things they were denied. The dark truth is this: hyper-independence protects you from disappointment, but it also blocks intimacy. It keeps you functional, but not fulfilled, strong, but not seen. And beneath all that strength is a child who learned too early that needing others was a risk they could not afford. When emotions were unsafe, numbness became survival. The child who grew up too fast did not have the luxury of emotional expression. Fear had to be controlled. Sadness had to be hidden. Anger had to be swallowed. Over time, emotions stopped feeling like signals and started feeling like threats. So the psyche adapted again. It learned to shut down. As adults, this often appears as emotional detachment. They don't cry easily. They don't react intensely. They stay composed in moments where others break. But this composure is not peace. It is dissociation refined into a personality trait. Psychologically, emotional numbness is the nervous system's way of conserving energy under prolonged stress. When pain becomes constant, feeling everything would be overwhelming, so the mind reduces sensitivity. The problem is that numbness does not discriminate. It dulls pain, but it also dulls joy, curiosity, excitement, and love. Philosophically, this creates an existential flatness. Life feels muted. Moments pass without depth. Achievements feel empty. Relationships feel distant. The person exists but does not fully inhabit their life. This is why many who grew up too fast struggle with meaning. They ask quiet questions they rarely voice. Why do I feel empty even when things are going well? Why doesn't happiness stay? Why does life feel like something I manage rather than experience? The truth is painful. They were never taught how to feel safely. Emotional awareness was replaced with emotional management. They learned control, not connection. And so they live with a strange contradiction, deeply sensitive on the inside, yet emotionally inaccessible on the outside. They feel too much internally, but show too little externally. This creates isolation even in intimacy. Numbness becomes the cost of early survival, and the longer it goes unexamined, the more life begins to feel like a performance rather than a presence. When survival defines you long enough, it starts to feel like identity. The child who grew up too fast didn't ask who they wanted to be, they asked who they needed to become. Responsible, reliable, invisible, strong. This survival role worked. It kept things stable, it earned approval, so it hardened into a self-concept. As adults, they often confuse adaptation with authenticity. They say, "This is just who I am," without realizing that who they are was shaped under pressure, not freedom. Philosophically, identity formed under survival is reactive, not intentional. It is built to prevent collapse, not to express truth. And when this identity goes unchallenged, it becomes limiting. They choose careers based on security, not passion. They choose relationships based on stability, not emotional resonance. They measure worth through productivity. They fear rest because rest feels like failure. Internally, there is often a vague sense of misalignment, a feeling that something is missing, but no language to describe it. That missing piece is the self that never had space to emerge. This is why many people who grew up too fast experience burnout, identity confusion, or sudden emotional breakdowns later in life. The survival identity can only function for so long before it demands reckoning. The question becomes unavoidable. If I am not needed, who am I? This moment is terrifying, but also transformative, because it marks the first time survival loosens its grip and choice becomes possible. Love requires exposure. Survival demands control. For those who grew up too fast, this creates conflict. Relationships trigger old wounds because closeness once meant responsibility, unpredictability, or emotional labor. So intimacy feels risky. They may attract partners who need fixing because competence feels familiar, or they may avoid deep relationships altogether because dependence feels dangerous. Either way, vulnerability remains the core fear. Psychologically, they equate love with obligation. If someone gets close, they expect to carry them emotionally. This leads to exhaustion, resentment, or withdrawal. They struggle to express needs because needs once created instability. They struggle to receive care because care feels unfamiliar. And so, relationships become imbalanced or distant. The tragedy is that they often want connection deeply, they just don't trust it. This creates a cycle of longing and avoidance, desire without safety, love without rest. And until vulnerability is redefined as strength rather than threat, relationships will continue to feel like something to manage rather than experience. Healing begins when survival is no longer necessary. This does not mean erasing the past. It means understanding it. It means recognizing that the strength you built was intelligent, but no longer required. That your nervous system learned protection, not peace. Healing for the child who grew up too fast is not about becoming weaker. It's about becoming softer without fear. It is about learning to rest without guilt, to ask without shame, to feel without control. This process is slow. It requires patience, compassion, and often grief. Grief for the childhood that never happened. But grief is not weakness, it is integration. Philosophically, healing is the return to choice. You are no longer defined by what you survived, but by what you allow yourself to experience. The child within you does not need fixing. They need permission. And when survival finally steps aside, life does not collapse, it opens. Growing up too fast does not end when childhood ends. It follows you quietly into your decisions, your relationships, your silences, your exhaustion. It lives in the way you stay composed while breaking internally, in the way you function flawlessly, yet feel strangely absent from your own life. You were never weak for needing safety. You were never flawed for wanting care. But the world taught you early that softness was dangerous, so you replaced it with strength, control, and responsibility. And it worked. It kept you alive. It kept things from falling apart. But survival is not the same as living. The dark truth no one tells you is this: the version of you that survived is not the version of you that is meant to stay forever. Survival is a season, not an identity. Yet many people spend their entire lives mistaking adaptation for authenticity. You learned how to carry weight before you learned how to rest. You learned how to endure before you learned how to feel. You learned how to be needed before you learned how to be loved. And so you became strong. But strength without safety becomes loneliness. The child inside you did not disappear. They went quiet. They stepped aside so you could survive. They waited, patiently, for the moment when the world would no longer demand armor. Healing does not mean blaming the past. It means finally telling the truth about it. It means admitting that what you call maturity was once fear, that what you call independence was once abandonment, that what you call discipline was once a child trying not to be a burden. There is nothing wrong with you for being tired. There is nothing broken about your emptiness. These are not signs of failure. They are signs that survival has outlived its purpose. The most courageous act is not pushing forward endlessly. It is allowing yourself to slow down without self-punishment, to receive without guilt, to rest without explaining yourself, to feel without managing the outcome. You do not need to earn peace. You do not need to prove your worth through suffering. You do not need to carry everything alone anymore. Because the truth is this: you were never meant to grow up too fast. You were meant to grow safely. And even now, it is not too late to return to what was skipped. Not by becoming someone new, but by finally becoming present. Survival saved you once. Now it is allowed to step aside. And when it does, you don't fall apart. You finally come home to yourself.